So today we're going to do a random quote generator. It is a great beginner project. We're going to use HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and vanilla JavaScript. And we're going to cover some very good things that you're going to keep utilizing. And we're going to explain everything as we go. This is not a huge project, but it's a very good learning project. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to need an editor. An editor is where you can type your code. So I'm using something called VS Code. It is completely free. It's one of my favorite editors. You can use whatever you want, including CodePen.io if you want. But this is what I'm comfortable with because I can do some really cool tips and tricks, and I'll show them to you as well. The first thing that we're going to need to do is we need to install an extension called Live Server. And what Live Server allows us to do is see everything that we're doing in real time. So we're going to go ahead and click this box icon right here, which stands for extensions. And I'm going to type Live Server. And I've got it installed already, and I want this one right here with the purple icon. So that's what we're going to need first. After that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this first. Always save your file first, and I'm going to name it index.html. Now you can name this whatever you want, but it is very normal convention, meaning it is the normal practice to name your very first page your index page, your very first style sheet, style.css. So I'm just going to stay with those conventions. So we're going to name this index.html. Now, you normally have to type out a bunch of code just to get to the part where you actually type. But with VS Code, there's something called Emmet that's already in there. And all you have to do is type the exclamation point, then enter, and it just fills out all that stuff for us. So it saves us a lot of time. So that's one reason why I like it. Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to erase the part that says document in our title, and we're going to name this our quote generator. Now, you're probably wondering, what is this title? What happens here is if you go to a normal website, like for example, I'll show us what we're using here. This is where we're going to be getting our Bootstrap from. You just go to bootstrap.cdn.com and you can get the link right there. We're going to click to copy that anyway. But this part right here where it says quick start, that is your title. So whatever you type in title is going to show up there on the tab of your site. So make sure you go to that website right now and copy this code right there. And we're going to paste this code here. So another cool tip is we're going to type in link and then tab, and it produces that for us. And we're going to paste our link where it says href. As you know, and if you don't know, href means the link that we're going to. So this is calling our Bootstrap link from that website, so we can utilize that. So now that we have that, you're also going to want the getbootstrap.com, the resources, the documentation. It explains how everything works in Bootstrap. So we're going to do just a couple things with Bootstrap, and I'm going to walk you through it, so don't worry too much about that. So the first thing we need is a container. Now, the way we use containers is in divs. A div allows us to utilize things. So what is a container? Imagine you have a bunch of water. You need to be able to drink that water in a way, and one great way to do that is by using a glass. Well, your container is like your glass in this situation. So I'm going to go ahead and type div dot container. Now what that means is the dot references class. So I'm saying I want a div with the class of container, and I press tab, and boom, it produces that code for me. So I don't have to type everything out. It's real shortcut. It's extremely handy. The more you code and the bigger your code gets, you're definitely going to want to get used to these shortcuts because it makes things significantly faster. So inside of here now, instead of doing that again, I'm just going to type out div class, and we're going to be utilizing our Bootstrap items now. So I want a row, and in that row, I want it to be a flex top, and I want to justify my content in the center. So what that means is whatever I'm putting in here right now, it's going to center my content for me, and it's going to keep it responsive. So even if it goes to the size of a cell phone, or if it is a full mobile page, it's going to be responsive to that width. So now I'm going to do a header class, and I want that class to be border shadow. And inside my header, I'm going to do an H1. And our H1 is going to be our quote generator. And that's basically saying this is what I want to say inside of my header. And so from there, we're going to close out our div, which is right here, create some space. And now I need to create a button. And this button is going to call our new quote every single time. So I'm going to do the same thing I did in the first part. I want to do a div, and I can just type div tab, and it'll produce that. And I want the same class. I want it to be a row of flex top. Oops. And I want it to be a justify content center. And inside this div, I want my button with a hashtag, and I want that hashtag to be button. So what is the hashtag? The hashtag represents an ID. So remember before we used a period to reference a class. That is how you call a class in your CSS. That is how you call a class in your JavaScript, where the hashtag represents an ID. Your class can be utilized for something utilized many times, and your ID should be attached to a singular item. I tried to separate it and show both instances so you can get used to both. But so right now we know I have a button with an ID of button, and I want this class to be a button large, and I want this to be the new, oh, took it outside of that, new dash quote dash button. And on this, I want an on-click event. So what's an on-click event? An on-click event means once this button is clicked, I want it to trigger something. So what I want it to trigger is a function that we're going to create called getQuote, which is basically going to get our quote. So we're going to do on-click because I want something to occur when I click this button, and it's going to be calling our getQuote and those two parentheses. That's how you reference a function. So we've got that, and I want my button to have a title, and we'll title it new quote. So that will be the text displayed on the button. So right now, I can save what I have, and we're going to go ahead and open with Live Server, and we're going to have a window open up. And our window shows us this right now. So this is what we've currently created. So our text would normally be here, but because we use the justify center content, it's placed it over here. Our button is also centered as well. And the cool thing about that is no matter the sizing of our window, it's maintaining its position, which is great for us. It saves us a lot of work with trying to keep things responsive. Very great to have that. So your live server is going to allow you to keep viewing what's happening on your screen. So from there, now I need a place to display my content. So I'm going to make some more space, keeping this, as you can see, this div, this closing of the div matches with this container. So I want everything that I'm typing to be inside of this container. So now I need to create some space for my quote. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to do a div. And inside this div, I want the class. And then it's going to be the exact same class again of row justify content center. All right. And so from here, I'm going to use a main tag. And I want this main tag to have a class of card. And basically, I just want a little card area that's going to allow me to display my quote. And we're going to use a p tag, and we're going to do a class. And the class is going to be quote. And then we're going to give a space. I'm going to do card body. This is your Bootstrap kicking in. And I want it to be centered. And so now, outside of that class, I want an ID, and that ID is going to be called new quote section. So we're going to do new quote, and we're going to write this in camel case. What did I just do? So new quote section. And in between this P, I'm just going to write a couple of dots, and that'll be our placeholder text. So this is going to change. We're gonna create that change. And so the last thing I want to do is, I know I'm going to have a CSS page, and I know I'm going to have a JavaScript page. So we need to link those to our main HTML page. So what we're going to do here is, up here, I'm going to type link again, and it's going to produce that area, and I'm going to type style.css. And what that's doing is it's linking the style page that I'm going to create to this page. And then down here, before the closing of the body, I'm going to type script, and I'm going to push down the source. And then the source is saying, where am I going to get my JavaScript from? So I know I'm going to name my JavaScript file the app.js file. So I need to have those in order to make any changes on this page. So right now, if we go back, this is what we have. We have our card with our text here. We've got our quote button right here, and we have our generator button. So the next thing I want to do real fast is I want to style this up. Now, we're not going to go too crazy with the style, but it does have to look a little decent. I mean, we're making this. We need to be proud of what we're doing, am I right? So we're going to go ahead and hit Control-N or Command-N, depending on if you're on a Mac or Windows. And we're going to save this, and we're going to name it the same thing that we linked in our style sheet on the HTML page, which is style.css. So here's the first thing I want to focus on. I want to focus on the header. So let's focus on the header. And we're going to do a padding of 2 We're going to do our background color. And I've got a color here that I like to use. And it's a 00 AEFF. Perfect. And it's like a light blue. It'll be fine. And then we're going to go ahead and do a margin top. And I want that margin top to be 2 And I want to do a text align center, because we need everything centered. And I want the color of that text to be white. So as we know, it's FFF. So if we save this, and then I come back and I bring my menu here, you can see that our header now is blue and our text now is white. And so now I want to focus on the quote part. What is the quote going to be? Well, I'm not going to really stylize it. I just want the font to be a bit bigger. So we're going to do a font size of 2 right there. And that'll just be perfect for that. And I want our button to be large. That's why we made that class of button large. And I just want to increase the margin for the button to 0.5 Nothing too crazy. I just want a little bit of space to emphasize that it's there. And so one thing that I also want to do, we need our card to be a bit bigger. And so I want to add the text align, and I want to center that, of course. I want my text centered, but I want my width of that card to be 45 So I want a big card. I want some nice space for all of my quotes to fit in there. All right. And so from here, I want to now stylize my new quote button that we discussed earlier. I want that button to look decent. So I would like the button to be slightly the same color here, but I also want to think about creating a hover effect for that, because I need the user to know that they're on the button. So what is a great way to do that? And the other thing I want with this button, I want a strong border color. So let's go ahead and do a border, and we're going to go ahead and add color, and let's go ahead and make that color black. So if we do that, or you know what, let's do what's very prominent. What's something loud that we could put this as? Let's try yellow. And now our button is really bright. You could see it, but it looks kind of ugly. Let's change that to something else. So if we just hover over this, this will pop up, and we can choose what we want. Let's choose a dark blue to go around the light blue. And that's pretty prominent, actually. So this is what we have now. So we have our quote generator, we have our new quote button, and it doesn't do anything yet. And I want the user to know that they're over this. Now, one cool thing about using the button class, it automatically adds that cursor change when we're hovering over it, but I would like the button to respond as well. So one cool thing that we can do here is, let's go back and just make sure our button is an ID. So let's go ahead and do button, and we're gonna add a colon and type hover. And this basically says when I'm hovering over the ID of button, I want this to happen. And let's change the background color, and let's just change it to, let's do teal since that's right there. And we'll save that, and we'll bring that back here, and when I'm over it, now this color changes. So now the user really knows that they're over this button. There won't be any confusion there. And now we're done with our styling. I want to hit Control N or Command N, depending on if you're a Windows or Mac. And I want to save this and save this as app.js. So now here is where we're going to be working on our JavaScript. Now, I wanted to save a little bit of time, and I grabbed a couple quotes that I'm just going to paste right there. And I'm using the let, but we can use var because that, I'm sure, you know, you may be not fully comfortable with all those syntaxes yet. So we use var quotes, and we have our quotes. And so now, if you remember, we have this on-click event called getQuote. So we need to get our quote. What is a way we can do that? Well, we need to have a function, and that function is going to be called getQuote. And so anytime you have a function, you want to put your parentheses there. And normally what would happen in a function is you may need to pass in some parameters for that function to pass. Right now, we don't need any parameters, so we can just go ahead and leave that empty. And what we need is a random number. So we have 5 places in our quotes. We need a random number to generate. And when that number generates, we need to choose which position in our quotes array, because this is an array, just to write this out here. So this is basically quotes equals this, and we've placed 5 items inside of it. So we need to choose which position in our array of quotes that we are going to be in and pull that quote out. So one way to do that is we're going to create a variable, var, and we're going to name it random number. Now it's very important that when you have variables, you try very hard to name them accurately. It's a very good habit to build up now because it will help you later on down the line. Because if you have code that's thousands and thousands and thousands of lines, and then you're reading through it and you have inaccurate naming, you're not going to know where it's really deriving from. So get in the habit now. So we're producing a random number, and to do that we're going to use math.floor, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but in case you're not, I'll explain it in a second. And we're going to do another math.random. And what's happening here is there's the math library, and we're calling the math.random function, which produces a random number, and we're doing the math.floor, which is rounding it down to the nearest number. And we're going to multiply that inside these brackets by quotes.length. So we're getting the entire length of the array, which in this case is 5, and we're multiplying that by the random number produced. And then we're rounding that, and the random number, mind you, is a decimal point. It's below 1. So we're multiplying that by 5, and then we're rounding that down to the nearest number, so that way it's going to land us somewhere between 0 and 4. So that way, as we all know, our counting starts at 0, so the first position of the array is 0. So it's going to produce something in that range. And then we're going to do our document dot get element by ID. And what's happening here is we're saying we want to call our document, our index.html, and we need to get something by its ID. And what we need to get by its ID is the new quote section, which is our card that we created. We want to display whatever we have produced here in this area. So we're going to add the new quote section. And what we're doing now is we're saying inner.html, meaning I want to push whatever I'm producing now into HTML code in that area. And I'm going to write equals, our inner HTML equals our quotes, which is our variable, and the random number. So now, and add my. So now what it's saying is to produce this random number, and I want to now take that same random number and put it in the quotes position, and I want to send it into the inner HTML. So this quote, in whatever position this may be, let's say for argument's sake, first solve the problem, then write the code, will now be sent as HTML code into our section right here with the dots, and it will change those dots. And so now let's save, and let's bring this back, and let's produce. And there you go. Very simple, very easy, and every time we press it, we'll get a new quote, and it'll keep cycling through, and if it lands on the same numbers, it'll produce the same quotes. And you know you're on your button because the color changes and the cursor changes. And there you have it. You have your very own random quote generator. I hope this helped you out very much. If there's anything I can do for you, please don't hesitate to ask. So make sure you check me out on social media. I'm on Twitter and I'm on Twitch. I live stream coding all the time at DThompsonDev. Make sure you also check out my podcast, Commit Your Code Podcast, where I interview amazing people in the tech industry and talk about their journeys to getting their positions in tech. Highly, highly recommend it. It's phenomenal. Until next time, I'll see you then.